Welcome to the story of Gary Fisher. Not the man, but the bike. This is Gary, my beloved bike. I took this bike from my mom because she had a road bike and I grew out of my bike. Anyway, I inherited it from her when I was in sometime in middle school. I can't really remember.
This is my bike. Always has been, Sal. My bike. You stole it. Now I want it back. In the meantime, always wear a helmet. You and all your friends should always wear a helmet, Sal. You never know when you're gonna fall off the bike. So wear a helmet. You gonna wear a helmet, Sal?
You're supposed to be telling me the story.
Shut up. Are you gonna wear a helmet?
Yep, you're supposed to be telling the story of the bike.
I got this bike at Velocity Peddler in East Lansing back when I was young, and I enjoyed it for a while until somebody named Sal stole it from me. I want it back. I want it back.
Do you actually?
I want it back.
I don't think that you do. Do you like mountain biking?
I did.
Did you?
My bike was stolen. I did. 1571.
But I really didn't like riding the bus to school, so I would ride my bike to school most of the time, as often as I could. And that was only the beginning. I had no idea what was going to come of my time with Gary. Sometimes when I was in elementary school, I would ride my bike to school with my mom, but not that often, so it was a lot of work, and it was kind of far. But in middle school, I earned the right of independence, the passageway to biking to school by myself, and a lot of times I would meet up with friends, really good friends, and we would bike to school, bike home from school, and it was a lot of times I think just the best part of my day because it made me feel so independent and so grown up, and it's just so fun. And I was a really active kid, so I really liked to move and to go on my bike all around. And there's something so fun about being a kid, biking home from school or to school, being I remember I would always just think I don't have to go to school right now, I do, but I don't, because it's not like you're on the school bus or your parent is driving you. You just get to go. So I really liked that, and I would ride in the winter sometimes to school in 6th and 7th and 8th grade, and it just made me feel so hardcore. It made me feel like I was on an expedition while I was in my suburban town, which I think is a really cool concept to consider still, expeditions, but in more regular places, because I grew up in a suburban town and there's not really access to big environments around you, mountains and big oceans and stuff. And so having your own style of expedition, getting creative with how you can be gnarly, I think that was the beginning of that idea. So I rode my bike to school a bunch. Then in high school, I still rode my bike to school. I still didn't want to take the bus. A lot of this just was because I didn't want to take the bus, but I also liked biking, I guess. So I biked to school, and then it was kind of a lot because I would bike to school, and then I had cross-country practice 2 miles from my school, so I would bike to cross-country practice, and then I would bike home. And that was a lot of biking. I just remember one day, it was during finals week, I biked home from school, and I was in this phase of my life where I was timing my bike rides because Google Maps gives a predicted bike time for how fast you can get places, and I thought it was so fun to see how much faster I could bike than the predicted bike time. So I was racing myself, and I was turning a corner and there was some gravel, and so I just absolutely ate shit. And it was the most painful bike crash I have still had to this day. It was terrible. I was just crying on the side of the road. This woman stopped and asked, oh my gosh, I actually just remembered another painful bike crash, which I actually have to tell you this story, but let me finish this one. So I was crying on the side of the road. A woman stopped and asked if I was okay, and I was like, yeah. And I just barely biked home so slowly. I fell on like my left knee and I think, yep, on my left knee and my left wrist, and I had the biggest like scratch. It was like a scratch doesn't do it justice. It was like more than a scratch on my knee, and my knee was so swollen. And the next day was the last day of school, and like, you know, I went to a pretty big high school, and so like the hallways in between classes were really bustling, and so I was just limping in between classes, like holding up traffic up and down the stairs. It was terrible, but luckily I learned when I got home from that day, I learned that I could scooter really well because I would stand with my swollen knee on the scooter and then push with the other leg. But yeah, that kind of sucked. Like I actually couldn't run for a while, like 2 weeks, honestly. It was just like a really, really bad bruise. It was so painful. Um, oh, but this other story. When I was in like 6th grade, I would bike to school almost every day with my friend Clara, and we were both like kind of competitive with each other. And we were going down this hill next to each other, and I'm pretty sure that either one of us or both of us had like those handlebars that kind of like curve, and just somehow our handlebars got connected while we were biking as fast as we could. And I'm pretty sure, I like don't remember that well, but I'm pretty sure we both went over the handlebars because I just remember she was wearing a white shirt and it was covered in grass stains. And someone on the road actually stopped his car and got out and asked if we were okay. And I think I cried a little bit, but she didn't. But that was a scary one too. So yeah, I kept biking to school through high school. Then my mom started working at my school, so halfway through I started to just go with her. But I still didn't have a car of my own, so I biked everywhere instead, like to parties and like to my friends' houses. And honestly, like there was nothing to do but to just embrace it as part of my personality. So I think that's also why I feel so connected to this bike, is because like it was such a big piece of my personality in my upbringing. Um, because like a lot of people would bike places, but it was like I it was a lot. Okay, but anyway, it was a big part of my identity. I biked a ton to parties. I biked around town, doing like just doing your high school shenanigans. It was awesome, and I loved my bike so much for it. I always locked my bike because I was always afraid someone was going to take it because it was so important to me. But like, well, this kind of leads me into college, but it's like if you aren't like a bike person, you might not know of the name Gary Fisher. But when I worked a job where we would mountain bike a little bit more, it was like part of our job was mountain biking, and people on the trails would like comment about my bike, and I didn't really know that it was like kind of like a cool thing because Gary Fisher is like, it's a man who made a company called Gary Fisher, but he's like considered like the godfather of mountain bikes, I think. So, so yeah, kudos to my parents for having good taste in mountain bikes. But since like I think he got bought out by Trek in like 2010 or something. So yeah, so it's like it's hard to come by. Like you can't get a Gary Fisher everywhere these days. You got to go on eBay or Facebook. Okay, where was I? So I brought my bike to college, and I biked around campus a little bit freshman year. Then after sophomore year, I had a really awesome internship that was like focused on outdoor recreation, and I really got into mountain biking that summer because it was a big part of our job. We also did like some trail work and stuff. Um, and I just remember like I took a lot of public transportation at that time also because I didn't have a car. And so I took this bus through rural Maine to get to my job, and my boss had to pick me up from the bus station. And I took my bike off the bus, and it was just like covered in rust. And it looks pretty good now, but thanks to all of the people in my life at that time who helped me fix it up. But it was a wreck, and it was just so funny throwing it into the bed of his truck when it was just absolutely in such poor shape. But we fixed it up, and it was good after that. And it was an awesome summer of biking and learning about the bike community, and just like the joy that you get on a bike it's just so fulfilling and fun and playful. So that was really awesome. And then after that, I moved to Oregon. So I stopped in Michigan, but I took public transportation, so trains and buses from Maine to Oregon. And while I was going from Michigan to Oregon, also in New York, I got such a hard time from the train conductor. That made me feel terrible. I was like, listen, dude, like, I am giving everything for public transportation and bikes, but please have mercy. And I think that's just like, sometimes it's just, it's just people, but they ended up being nice in the end through their gestures, not through their charisma, but they let me keep my bike on the train even though it wasn't packed up. And then, so fast forward to Michigan, I got on the train with my bike from Michigan to Chicago, and then it transfers from Chicago to Oregon. Oh, I got on the train a day early, so luckily I had a friend in Chicago who I could stay with that night. She picked me up from the train station, me and my bike, and then brought me back the next day. But the following day, hey, what? Alright, back to my video. Where was I? I was just telling them about...
Did you feed him?
No.
Okay.
Oh,
baby.
I was just telling them about... So I started from middle school, and then I was just explaining... I got to the part about when I moved to Oregon.
Oh.
And how when I got on the train, they sent my bike to Spokane, Washington instead of Bingen, Washington.
Yeah.
And then they sent it to me.
Don't forget about the time that it went flying off the highway.
I did forget to tell that story.
Yeah.
So when I was in Maine,
When
I was in Maine, I brought my bike. I was just bringing my bike down to campus, and me and my friend Isabel, we put our bikes on the back of her car, or maybe we were moving out, and my bike flew off the back of her car on the highway. And luckily it was a pretty rural highway, so it didn't get run over and no one got hurt in the process. And that made me respect my bike so much more, because the only thing that broke was the derailleur, which like is what shifts the gears. Like everything else was intact. And it was just like the craziest experience, because I remember putting the bikes on the back of her car being like, so cool, we don't need our dads to help us with this anymore. And then, of course I had to think that, and then there goes Gary flying down the highway. Like, we actually looked out their rearview window and he was like flying. And that was that. The bike was fine, we were fine, everyone was fine. It was just a chaotic experience. But anyway, back to Oregon. So my bike had to go on a solo adventure from Spokane, Washington to Bend, over Mount Hood on its own. It was an independent bike adventure on the front of this like bus that, it goes on that route. And there was like a snowstorm over Mount Hood, so it arrived and it was like covered in ice. And my roommate took me to the bus station, and I had to like pick up my bike. Like, it was like my child at daycare or something. And it was just the weirdest experience seeing my bike so independent. And then I rode it home, and then that winter I rode to work every day. It was just a couple miles, and it mostly wasn't snowy, just like for a week that winter it was snowy, and that was really hardcore, but it was really fun, honestly. And even when it wasn't snowy, I had so much fun, like just waking up. I had to wake up early for that job, and waking up so early, having to be on my bike in the cold, it was so empowering, and it was such a great start to my day every day. And you know, it just adds a level of playfulness to your day, having to bike. And in the cold, you don't get sweaty on your way to work, so that is nice too. So that was Oregon. I didn't have a car there, but I did have my bike, and that was enough for me. And then I worked in Oregon that summer, and I drove back with my friend across the country, and we put on the back of his car. It didn't fall off this time. Drove back home, and I've been biking ever since. I mean, I've gone back out to Maine, brought it back out to Maine, inside of my, no, actually, he took it on his car, and then I met it out there, but, yep, still biking around.
It's important stuff in there.
All right. Thanks, Mom.